The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production.
There is a reason, Kev. I've found out why you are never seen in the same room as Darth Vader. Last week, when you'll be thinking, what's he going on about? Last week, when I was doing the edit, bring on the music, I noticed that you have a particular breathing style sometimes. And I thought, hang on a minute, that's Darth Mullins. Luke, I am your father.
Is that really what I sound like? Right. Maybe it's COVID.
No, it's the compression you see coming down Skype that occasionally when you take a deep intake of breath. No. Oh dear.
That wasn't a clever thing to do.
No, don't be doing that. So, I wondered this week if you could possibly, just for the edit, it's just a little bit easier for me, whether maybe you could hold back on the deep intakes of breath.
The FujiCast.
I'll hold my breath all the way through.
Well, no, I still want you to breathe, Kev. I want you to breathe, but just not in this fashion. Do you frighten the kids at all at night when you turn up? They're saying, it's Darth Mullins.
Not my kids, the ones next door.
Oh, Kev, another week gone. What did you do this week? Where did you go? Anywhere nice?
No. Nowhere.
Yeah.
Stables.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
I'm a new studio.
Yeah, the new studio and the new horse has arrived. Oh, I still think he doesn't look quite right, but yeah, there was a picture. You took a picture. He didn't really like you too much, though, did he?
It's a she. She's called Star.
Oh right.
Or actually, you shouldn't call it a she because it's not a she in horse world. It's a mare.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
A mare. She's lovely, actually. She's bloody huge.
Is she? Well, I mean, Rosa's only a slip of a thing. You're not. I mean, how tall is this horse?
Well, it's 15 one hands, whatever that means.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is big. But, they grow into it. And Rosa, Gemma will be riding it as well. So, needs to be big.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. I didn't mean it to sound like that. Sorry, Gemma. I know. Moving on. You and your questions from our electronic mailbag and, of course, also through the FujiCast private Facebook group that you are welcome to become a part of. We'll talk about the email address in just a moment's time. If you're not a Fuji film shooter, don't worry. Everybody's welcome. And there's Kev's Book of the Week. What's your Book of the Week this week, Kev?
My book of the week this week is called Photography in America.
Okay. And we've got to do the bump to the fronts.
Yes.
Oh, and our guest this week, Kev, is
Ibarionex.
Yes, right. So he's coming. You've been interviewed a couple of times on Ibarionex's show, haven't you?
Yeah, he's the candid frame. He's the god. He's the podfather, as I like to call him.
The podfather of the photographic world. Well, he's been doing it 15 years.
Yeah, it's a good little interview actually. I mean, he's also a very good photographer. Obviously, we talked about the podcast as well because I think that the world we live in, there's everybody's doing podcasts or trying to do podcasts and stuff. So I thought it would be quite interesting. Yeah, such a nice guy.
Is he more a podcaster than a photographer these days?
Well, I have to listen to the interview. Well, see what he says.
I've edited it, Kev. This is just called conversation.
You have to take out all my breaths.
Oh dear. Right, emails. Yeah, you might have noticed that the contact form is gone. We were sick to death of getting. Well, it wasn't just. I mean, the spam a lot was going over the top, wasn't it? It was a huge amount of spam. Why was that, Kev? What's happened in WordPress land?
Well, you always every year you may not notice it yourself, but every year spam goes up after Christmas. Presumably because all the spammers have gone home to see their mums and dads. But it usually goes up after Christmas. And there had been an update to WordPress that opened up a hole, I think, in the security of some of the plugins, the contact form plugins, which they pretty much fixed straight away with another release. But yes, we did get loads and loads and loads, and so I just deleted the form. That'll teach them.
Now nobody can get to us. That learned you.
Yeah.
You can still write in though. there is still an email address there, isn't there? Where do you find the email address now, Kev?
You can still go to the contact form. It still has all our details, but the email address is clickupfuturecast.co.uk.
Yeah.
And in fairness, most people do use that email address, or they use the Facebook group. So, just the contact form for now is gone. Maybe one day I'll get around to moving it all to Squarespace, but that's a little way down the line at the moment.
Why is it that Squarespace doesn't have so much of the same problem, he says, not wanting to tempt fate?
I honestly, it's not really a WordPress thing. It's the integration of WordPress and the plugins and various other things, So it's, in fairness to WordPress, it's an open source platform. Lots of people working on it, for free, effectively, for the community. So, you can't expect it to not have any kind of issues whatsoever. And this was just a minor one. They fixed it pretty quick, but in the meantime we got 1,000,000,001 spam emails.
We did, yeah.
which my mood has been pretty fluctuating this week. Quite up and down. And so I did just kind of threw my fists at the keyboard in anger and deleted the contact form.
Careful, Kev. You'll be having those the blood pressure tablets like me. The doctor, by the way, this week was not very happy with me. And said she's gonna up the ante on the dosage if I don't do something about getting a bit fitter.
Yeah.
She's very forthright, my doc, which is good. I appreciate that, but at the same time, I did have to remind her that I haven't really worked properly for about a year now, and that's reasonably stressful in itself. And have you tried homeschooling?
However, I will, in her defence, she's been dealing with COVID. I would imagine that's quite stressful.
Not in our little doctors. Not in our town. We don't have any of that nonsense going on here. That's true, Kev. Very, very true. Yeah, we did chuckle. So another thing we need to remember to do from now on, we had a meeting and we underlined it. Bump to the fronts to make sure that you're when you write in because you're a patron that you will be bumped to the front. Yes. So apologies that we haven't been bumping, if you pardon the phrase, as much as we should have been. So we will bump more often. Yeah,
we got a few names to read out as well. The Patreon, so it's patreon.com/FujiCast. If you wish to buy us a coffee, you're more than welcome. If you choose not to, absolutely no problems whatsoever. There's a huge name in this list, so I'm going to do my best. We've got Sean Garelli, thank you, Sean. We've got Carl Mikkel, thank you, Carl. We've got Matt Johnson, thank you, Matt. We've got Jason, just put his name as Jason.
Just Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, that's right.
We've got Mark Hilton.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it's not the same Mark Hilton that's on Malmesbury High Street. And then we have
stand by
Girish, pretty sure that bit's right. Balasubramaniam.
Sorry, Kev, do that again.
Balasubramaniam.
One more time, just for luck.
Girish Balasubramaniam.
I'll give you that one, Kev. Yeah,
I reckon that's right. That's a great name, though. I love it. So yes, thank you to Sean, Carl, Matt, Girish, Jason, and Mark.
Thank you very much
for supporting us on Patreon. Now, we also did discuss Patreon a little bit more, not to kind of bang on about it. And as you know, dear listeners, hopefully at some point when the doors of the world are opened again and we can all tentatively peer our heads out and say hello to the neighbours and kiss people on the cheeks and stuff like that.
Kev, I'm not worrying about cheeks. When we're allowed to kiss, I'm just going full on. I'm going to release my inner Frenchman.
Well, I'm going to stay. I'm not coming around your house to do a podcast then.
I'm even going to greet your horse with it. Come here.
You won't have much choice about that. So we do have some long tail plans for having some kind of get together, which may or may not happen in the medium to long term future. All depends on the world spinning.
Is this the big one that we've been talking about, or is this a slightly smaller one? That
well, doesn't really matter. But the whole point is that we have been on Patreon. We've kind of just said thank you very much, and you can buy us a coffee, and for your reward, basically you don't get anything. But that's one of the things we did put on there, is that you will get discounts to any large-ish events. Obviously, we'll still do our free meetups and get-togethers and street shoots and sitting at the end of the pier in Brighton and things like that. But if we do something a little bit more dramatic, I'm trying to. Hopefully, people are reading between the lines. Then there will be a discount involved for those people because we have to reward it. It's in the Patreon T's and C's. You have to give something back.
Yeah.
So to that end as well, those of you who are on Patreon will from Monday be getting a little email each Monday saying podcast ready and a few kind of links and bits and pieces that will go with that.
Right, and also you get bumped to the front with your questions. So should we go for one?
Yes.
John, just John. Hey fellas, yada yada. What value do you think there is in photography education or qualifications? Now, we've talked about this before, I know, but John may have missed it last time. I've kept photography as a hobby for over 10 years, but recently started doing paid interior property work. Aside from expanding my own knowledge, what other benefits do you see in, for example, a diploma in photography? Cheers. Thank you, John. I did actually do my, is it MVQ? Yeah, MVQ in photography, which has meant absolutely nothing when it came to any form of importance. Well, in terms of somebody saying, "Here, have you got any qualifications? Have you got an ology?" Because the answer would always have been, "Yeah, I've got the NVQ." Oh, right, okay. But I guess what it did do though is because I remember one of the modules in it which I particularly enjoyed was the history of photography. Now that kind of stuff, when you're applying yourself, that's a great deal of fun and a great deal of education in what you're about to do for a job. I thought that or you don't have to be doing it for a job. I thought that was a great reason to be doing some sort of diploma. But if it's for sort of wowing your future clients, I don't reckon, Kev, it's that important, really.
Yeah, I would say, I kind of agree with you. I think things like diplomas and, kind of further education courses have their merit in terms of, interest, and it might be something that you enjoy doing. But I don't really think that it's kind of going to necessarily get you more work.
No.
Now, that said, you can do diplomas from, kind of like New York School of Art and things like that, which would be very different. Diploma from Basingstoke College in photography probably has less impact. And of course, there was lots of photojournalism courses. In fact, the one in South Wales still runs. The University of Wales, which is in part of it is in Newport now, still runs, and it's still very popular. And that kind of thing that's very well established.
Yes.
will probably look very good, but that's a 4-year university course. Yeah, so I mean, you know what, I've got nothing. However, I would love to do art history. Love to do a degree in art history. That's what I'd like to do.
Well, and I think some of these diplomas, and certainly what I was talking about with the history of photography, although it wasn't that in depth, it couldn't be in a year. I think it was a year's course. It does open your eyes and your mind to other things that you otherwise probably wouldn't think about if you weren't taking some sort of evening course, and that can be a good thing, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, I ran an evening course at Cirencester College the year before last. I should have been doing it this year as well, and it was on documentary photography. And the people that attended there was a person who worked in a bank, there was a barman, there was a couple of retired people, another one of them was a lecturer at the university, and they had no ambitions to go on to be professional photographers. They just enjoyed doing something in the evenings, and hopefully they got something out of it. But it was more about something to do, something to enjoy, something to look forward to on a Tuesday evening, spending 2 hours with me and my fine face. And in fairness, one of them came back on the second week as well. yeah. I mean, who are we to say whether it's right or wrong?
Yeah.
I think that it's up to you. I would love to, if I had the time and the money, I would love to do a degree in art history. Not because I think it will get me a better job, but because I would just really enjoy it.
I certainly don't think there's anything wrong in doing it, and you are absolutely right. It's a lot of fun. Are you going to carry on doing your one then when this COVID is all over?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we will get back together, me and Cirencester.
Yeah.
I had hoped to kind of expand it a little bit. But obviously,
what were you going to do?
Well, I was hoping that we could do it more of a kind of part-time thing rather than just a evening course.
Ah, I see. Oh, right. Wow. So that would have been them coming in, what, 2 or 3 times a week?
Well, no, probably more like one afternoon a week rather than 2 hours every 2 weeks or something. But yeah, it's anyway, it's all up in the air.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, hopefully not too long, Kev. Keep
Maybe.
the faith, fingers crossed, touching wood. Your question.
Right, okay, from the Facebook group, we are going to go, I'm going to start off with Ted Strang. Oh, hang on, this doesn't look like a question either. It says, what's the weather been like lately by you guys over there?
That's not a photographic question. Well,
here in Wisconsin, Ted, of course, was the kind enough to write us the handwritten letter last week.
He was, yes. Yeah.
Here in Wisconsin, it was minus 30 Fahrenheit last week and will be 50 degrees this Saturday. Plus 50 degrees. So what's that in our numbers? Minus 30. I can bake a cake in Fahrenheit, but I wouldn't have no idea about like sunbathing in it.
Minus 30 Fahrenheit is minus 34 C. That doesn't
minus
sound
34?
Right. Yeah.
Wow. So what's 50? Plus 50 must be around about 55 degrees.
No, it's 10. It's 10 Celsius, 50 Fahrenheit.
Oh, okay.
It's very odd.
Well, anyway,
it works in sort of pounds, shilling, pence, and dogs per miles per hour. Sort of.
It was very cold.
Yeah.
And it was very hot all in a week. That was it. That's what he said.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good. It's nice to know. Do you want to go for a question then from Facebook? By the way, you've got very Welsh all of a sudden. Is that because you gave the English a bit of a pasting?
We did give them a bit of a pasting.
Yeah, with your lucky try given, which even the referee says was wrong.
Oh, no, hold on.
The whole thing would have changed had it not been for that.
Well, okay. In which case, you can go back to the two forward passes that England had for their tries against Italy. You can go back to last year when Gareth Anscombe had a perfectly valid try disallowed. You could also go to the fact that if Owen Farrell wasn't such a mouthy little, he might get a little bit more credence from the
referees. I think he was just holding his corner there. I think that's all fair.
Stop it.
Oh, right. Okay, Scott's told us to stop it. Right.
He held it wrong. He didn't, schoolboy rugby. The first thing you learn in rugby is never turn your back when the whistle goes, never. And in fairness to Owen Farrell, he was chatting to the referee. That's fair enough. He was trotting back. The rest of them were all sat under the posts.
No, but that's because he told them to go and have a conflab.
Nobody has a conflab. Nobody has a conflab about things like that.
They were having a conflab.
They knew what the penalties were for. No.
They were told. No. He told them to go and have a chat about...
how many games of rugby have you played?
Their behaviour. No, Kev, you can't do that. That's like saying, if you've never sat in Parliament, how dare you have a political view? It just wasn't the code, Kev. It seemed to be more like the opportunist thing that a footballer might do. Rugby players are above that. Although I do agree with you, England need to shape up on their conduct and silly penalties. But the ref, who said he was wrong, he did tell him, Kev, to have a little chat with themselves, didn't he? Come on.
Yeah, and they were. They were chatting away underneath the posts like they shouldn't have been doing, because nobody ever does.
Okay, go on.
There you go.
Pick a question.
Right. This question is from JPR Williams. And he says...
Yeah.
Okay, no, this question is
You never know. He might be a photographer. You never know.
Well, I played rugby with him, JPR Williams. Yeah. One game. Even though he was about 65 at the time, he was still as hard as nails.
I think I used to smoke JPR Williams. Didn't they used to sponsor a Formula One team?
Come on, let's move on. Wales best.
Go on.
Andy Estonia says, sorry being quiet, moved house and done very little else. Anyway, preamble over. Here's my question. What phrase in other photographers' bios do you just dislike? Mine is full-time picture maker. It's the double hyphens he doesn't like. Good question. Come on, you can smash this question. Come on, you're good at it. You're awesome at these answers.
Kev, you know what I feel about the word awesome. Well, if anybody talks about cupcakes, loving cupcakes, and, I don't know, talks about their horses or anything like that, that's the sort of thing that switches me off immediately. I think it's a point was made to me recently on Photography Daily. We did a business thing, and it was all about the fact that you're there as a service to somebody. Nobody really needs to know that you love eating cupcakes and blah blah blah. Yes, it's nice to tell them a bit about you, but it's more about what you can give them than them being wowed by frilly nonsense. So it's frilly nonsense that I can't bear.
I get that. I suppose it does depend a little bit on your market. If you are, if you're aiming at the kind of what they call it, TP weddings and all that kind of stuff, then maybe. But yes, I totally agree with you on that. For me, I don't know what raises my hackles. It's it doesn't really. There is so like 9 in 10 websites I go to and I look at the bios. It nearly always starts with, I've been shooting since my father handed me a camera at the age of 8, or my mother handed me a camera at the age of 8. And I just wonder if really 9 in 10 photographers that actually happened to. That's always the thing that I kind of think. Father gave you a camera at the age of 8. Maybe true, maybe not. But yeah, that's the kind of thing.
We're supposed to be creative individuals, so try and be more creative than somebody handed me a box brownie. Having said that, some of the photographers that I talk to and interview, when I look at their biog, and they might be right up the tree as well with regard their status, still start with my father handed me a box brownie. So
it might be true.
Yeah,
Maybe,
well, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
My dad handed me a pasty.
What did it have a good aperture on it? What was it?
It had a big G at the front and an Instas at the end.
Nice. Paul Timlett says, "Hi chaps, apologies. I submitted a question via the contact form on the website earlier, but I do have a follow-up. Well, we might not have seen that one because Kev switched the juice off on that one because we were getting so much spam."
Was it Paul that was trying to get us to claim that $2 million that was in New York? Somebody's left us in New York.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit strange. What, you just left it on the pavement? Apart from not having a mic, I don't have a headset either. So would I be better off just buying a headset with a mic instead for podcasting? Oh, it's a podcasting question. I'm not sure I can plug a separate mic and headphones into my MacBook Pro. Well, you can certainly plug in your headphones, as it's got a little jack on the right-hand side. I think it's a 3.5, isn't it? Obviously, you'll need to convert if you've got some decent headphones with a 1/4-inch jack, though many of those, of course, have an unscrewable cap on the jack that makes them into a smaller plug, so that's sorted. And then as input, a decent USB mic. I know it's a Shure, Kev, but remind me of the model number of yours.
Yeah, I've got the Shure SMB. I'm looking around.
So that's that can go in. That's a USB mic, isn't it? So that would go straight in.
It's USB and XLR. So yes, it will go. It comes with a those little micro cable to USB-C. So that would go in.
And then just choose your input pool.
I presume it's the same on a Mac, that on a Windows you have to say to it, right, my input is currently set to my Shure microphone and my output is set to the standard speakers on the laptop.
Yeah, absolutely the same. But a headset mic, I don't know really very many good headset microphones. You do swap off a little bit of quality when you do that. I would always have a mic is a mic, a headset is a headset.
A lot of people use the Apple with white cable that dangles down.
Earpods, rather.
Yeah, a lot of people use them for podcasting because the speaker on those is very good and the audio coming out of them is excellent.
They're not bad, are they? They can be very good. Yeah. But I would always say go for a separate mic and headphones if you can, because your quality is going to be so much better. I mean, I know the quality. It's interesting because this week, Kev, in Bunker Malmesbury, you're in Bunker Malmesbury's kitchen, aren't you? So
yeah, I'm at home now. I've got my new shiny studio with my new soundproofed walls, and I ain't got any internet.
Yeah,
it's really frustrating.
So the sound is slightly different this week for you. Sometimes it's slightly you need they always say you don't want it to be too dead. The sound in that kitchen's quite good, but actually there's no what I would call really lively spaces. You want some sort of long wall that's got nothing on it. So you always need some sort of bounce. One wall, something has to have bounce. That could be a ceiling, I suppose. But that room that you're in now, I know it. It's got so many angles and things. That's actually acoustically that kitchen of yours is very, very good.
I'm very pleased you like it.
Yeah. Right, go on. Photography question.
Okay, so this one's from Russell Goffwood. He says, "Hello guys, thanks for the great content. I came across the term lens calibration the other day. Is this something we need to think about with Fujifilm cameras, or is it more relevant when using lenses that are a different brand to your particular camera? Thank you." Okay, so yes, lens calibration is something that people who use DSLRs will be very much aware of.
Yes.
It's not so much about using lenses that are different to the brand of the camera you own. It's all about what they used to call micro lens movements.
Yeah.
and you would have to get this little target and calibrate the lens. I never ever did it once with my DSLRs, I have to say. You could sometimes get lenses that were so out of calibration. It did happen to me a couple of times, and I just swapped the lenses rather than got them recalibrated. Yeah. But you don't have to worry about it with Fujifilm. It just doesn't. It's not a thing. Don't worry.
Thing, is it? No.
It's all done inside. The fairies inside pedal hard in the calibration department.
Happy days. So don't worry about it if you've got a Fujifilm camera.
I'm fairly sure you don't need to worry about it for any mirrorless, whether it's Sony, Canon, Nikon. They still around, Nikon, and the other ones.
Kevin. You'll have all the Nikon fans complaining like mad.
I know.
Right. Ibarionex. Now, tell me about him a little bit so we can go into it smoothly.
Well, he's somebody I've always admired. You've probably admired him as well, being from your podcasting head.
Yes.
And I was a guest on his show many years ago. Must be 4, 5, 6, maybe years ago. I can't remember now.
That long ago? Wow.
Yeah, it was a while back. And those of you that know the Candid Frame, if you're into podcasting, will know that he has interviewed everybody who has ever existed that has touched a camera. He's an amazing guy, and it's quite an interesting interview.
And of course, he's a Fujifilm ex-photographer, and we'll pop up the link for his website that will take you to the Candid Frame and also to all his amazing photographs. And because he's a guest, he is allowed, Kev, to curse. There's no bouquet chicken to rescue Ibarionex today. Fascinating interview though between you two.
On your website, you describe yourself as a photographer, writer, educator, and podcaster. Which do you see yourself as mostly?
A photographer first, always. Yeah, that's an easy one. Followed by probably the podcasting.
Where did photography come in your evolution of life?
Oh, it came really early. I was a member of the Boys Club of Hollywood here in the Los Angeles area, and one of the counselors there was a real fan of photography. And there was a darkroom that I guess it had been there since the 40s, but it had fallen into disuse. So he fixed it up, stuck it with chemicals and paper, and he had 2 photojournalist friends of his come. And he gathered a bunch of us kids in there, probably about 7 or 8 kids in that small little dark room. And they taught us how to load film into a camera and process the film and make prints. And I was just hooked. And they had these these cameras were old. These were like these literally box cameras from the 50s. And, they probably had a Olympus half-frame camera. I think it was the only one that was relatively new. It was probably 60s, and I was just hooked. And at some point the other kids lost interest, and that's all I wanted to do. So every time I would come to the club, I'd ask for the keys to the darkroom. I'd go in and load a roll of film into the camera, shoot around the club or on the streets in Hollywood, and then come back and spend all my hours in the darkroom. They had to kind of knock on the door, to get me out of there at the end of the day, because I could have stayed there all night if they'd let me. When people take a look at my work, they'll probably ascribe me as a documentary or a street photographer. But for me, I'm exploring a lot of different things. I just like making photographs. I like doing portraiture. I like doing travel. I like doing street. I'm playing around with self-portraiture right now for a small project. And for me, it's just the act of just making something from nothing. That's the thing that's always intoxicated me, intrigued me about photography, is the ability to be able to take these things that I'm seeing with my naked eye and to make something that eventually creates a reaction. I stuttered when I was a kid, and I felt very awkward in terms of being able to express myself verbally. Surprisingly, now that I'm a podcaster, but nevertheless, when I was a kid, it was really something that I struggled with. But I found that when I had a camera and I made pictures and I showed people prints, I felt that it gave me a voice, and it gave me a sense of confidence about my ability to be able to express something about my experiences in a way that other things just didn't. And it was just very empowering. And I think that's one of the reasons why I still find photography very sort of intoxicating, because I feel like it really gives me a sense of confidence and power about my own life that I really don't feel like I get from anything else that I do. Even though I'm successful in doing things like writing and podcasting, for me, photography at its heart is something that just gives me so much, period, in so many different ways.
Now, you mentioned briefly there that you're doing a recent project you said about self-portraits. Is that something that's come about because we've all spent so much time at home not taking real pictures, if you like, or pictures of other people, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm newly a Fuji ex-photographer, Fuji creative. And, we've been trying to do different things so that we can get to know each other. And we were put together with another Fuji creative, and we were supposed to basically come talk to each other and come up with some idea that we would work in collaboration with each other. Not exactly working on the same thing, not a strict collaboration, but we just basically have an idea, and then we would just like riff on it. And me and Alison Conklin decided that we would try to talk about different aspects of our lives through photography. I won't speak for what she's doing, but for me personally, I live with major depressive disorder as well as ADHD. And that's something I was diagnosed with only about maybe 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now. And for me, it was like, I wonder if I can somehow illustrate in photographs what that experience has been like for me living with that. So I took my X Pro 3 and a 16 millimeter lens, and I just started doing a series of multiple exposures. And because of the nature of the X Pro 3, I can't really look at the viewfinder when I'm doing this. So I just kind of put a 16 millimeter lens, and I was practicing with multiple exposure, moving the camera, trying slightly different shutter speeds, working with different color temperatures with each shot, and then accentuating that in Lightroom or in Photoshop. And just trying to get images that are very sort of abstract, but get to the emotion of what it's like to have been in my head during moments. Because especially with the ADHD, my mind can be all over the place. I'm just getting pulled in all these different directions. And I wanted to be able to create images that sort of evoke that. And doing self-portraiture is not something I really have ever tried or had a desire to. But in talking to her, I realized that if I'm experiencing some resistance to doing something, that's probably exactly the thing I should be doing. So both of us were feeling along the same way in terms of turning the camera on ourselves. We had the desire to, but because of self-consciousness, because of insecurity, we didn't really want to do it, but we kind of encouraged each other to do it. So for the last couple of weeks, I've just been playing around. And it's been uncomfortable, but it's been really interesting because the images I've created are completely unlike anything I've ever made before, which is, I think, a really good thing about it. I don't know what, if anything, I'll do with these photographs other than sharing them with Allison and with the small group that we're sharing images with at the end of the month. But I think it's really good to do something that is really outside one's comfort level.
You mentioned obviously that you are a ex-photographer, Fujifilm ex-photographer ambassador. I love that idea that you and Alison and the rest of the gang over there are kind of collaborating and doing something to keep yourselves occupied. Now, how did the ex-photographer thing come about? I think it's quite recent.
Yeah, it was the middle of last year. Basically, I just got contacted because I know a lot of people who are already, I guess, photographers. So I guess my name was thrown in the bag. And so they contacted me and they wanted to know whether I would be interested. And that when I found out more about what was involved with it, I was like, yeah, I'd be interested in that, because all the people that I know, like Valerie Jardin and Rinzi Ruiz, have all had very good things to say about their experience with Fuji. And I've been using the equipment, for years now. And I was going to use the gear regardless of whether I was made that, but I really thought it would be a nice way of getting more insight into the equipment and also just from a marketing point of view, greater awareness about the podcast that I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that's a huge audience that would be available to me. So I talked to them for a while with Stacy and all the other people, and then I applied for the ex-photographer, which is I guess the next tier over from the creatives, and I got selected, I think, back in November or January. So it's really a very short period of time, and I'm still sort of getting acclimated to what's involved. But one of the things I got to do was get to work with the new X100S, the pre-production model.
Yeah.
And shot some images for the new release, which was, that was quite fun. My first opportunity to seriously use a medium format camera.
Yeah. How did you find it?
I really loved it. It was really interesting because it's a 100 megapixel camera, and a lot of people talk about that, but there's a certain look that you get from it, which is largely due to the compression, due to the larger sensor and the optics. So when I was photographing my normal street photography or doing portraits, I could really see that this camera was giving me a really distinctive, different look, which was really sort of exciting. And it's like, wow, this is something new to play with. It wasn't just the fact that I could make these huge prints and or I could crop, that really, well, yeah, that's an advantage. It was the look that it was giving me. And I wish I'd had it for longer than 2 weeks, because I wanted to experiment with it a lot more to see not only how it could impact the work that I'm doing now, but what other doors it might open for me in terms of other kind of work that I might not have considered when I'm using a normal X series camera.
That you just said something that made me chuckle a little bit, that quite a few photographers. And I think that's probably the understatement of the year.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people listening will obviously know that you're a photographer, but will also have been listening to the Candid Frame for a long time. Now, I did a little bit of estimations and research by looking at the episode list, and you're at 550 episodes?
Yeah, 551, and I'll be 552 tomorrow, I think. Yeah.
Wow. And how long has it been going?
2006.
2006. So, I mean, you have literally had the who's who of photography royalty on that podcast.
Yeah.
Mary Ellen Marks, Sam Abel, Joel Merwitz, Elliot Erwitt, I think I remember.
Elliot Erwitt, yeah.
Certainly when it first started, and I think that was part of your story, was that you wanted to create a podcast that you weren't experiencing at the time. Is that how it came?
Yeah, because I started listening to podcasts around 2005, and that was pretty much when it was starting. And I was listening to some other podcasts that were out there. There was like Jeff Curto's History of Photography podcast, Martin Bailey's Photography podcast. They had all started maybe around 6 months before I had, but they still were. They were talking largely about equipment. No one was doing anything with respect to interviews with photographers. And I felt like, wow, that'd be kind of neat to have someone do an interview show. And I said, well, if no one else is doing it, why don't I? And because I'd worked at Nikon for 8 years before, and then at the time I was working as an editor at several photo magazines, I knew a lot of photographers anyway. So I just started reaching out and saying, hey, I want to do this interview show. Can I interview you? So a lot of the people who I'd known from the magazines, like Rick Salmon and William Neal, John Isaac, they were all up for it. I already had relationships with them, so I just needed to learn how to do a podcast, how to record audio, how to edit audio on GarageBand, which was what I used at the time, how to host it, how to create a website and a blog. And I started doing it every 2 weeks, sort of cutting my teeth on it. And eventually I, made the crazy decision to do it every week. And I'm still doing it.
Still doing it. Well, the research, the interviews that you do on the Candid Frame, I think are great because you clearly do the research on the photographers first, and you really engage with them. And I think that I remember asking Martin Parr a question. I said, "What's your favorite picture?" And he said, "Well, you can't have a favorite picture. That's like asking somebody, an author, what their favorite page of a book they've written is." Yeah. So I am going to ask you, though, however, do you have any favorite interviews that you've done? Anything that stands out? Anything that went right or wrong dramatically?
Yeah, I mean, talking to my photographic heroes has always been, sort of a highlight. Having a chance to sit with Mary Ellen Mark or Joe Meyerowitz or Dan Winters. They're people whose work I've been following for a long time. So for me, to have a chance to sit down with them as a peer is always just very, very satisfying, very inspiring, very exhilarating. But, sometimes it's the conversations that I've had with people that most people have not heard of. And somehow I just have a wonderful conversation with them, and I'm just left feeling so good after it's done. And I find that it's not so much the reputation of the photographer or how big their name is that results in it being an interview that I think is quote unquote better than the average one. It's really being able to put aside all the pretentiousness, to be able to really have a genuine conversation where you're really both excited about talking with each other. And then when that hits, when that's happening, man, it's just as good as being in the zone when you're making photographs, right? When you're just in that spot and it's just happening and there's no effort at all.
When you think about people like Mary Ellen Mark, who of course is no longer with us, we often talk on our show about the importance of legacy through photography, but actually legacy is in sound as well. And Neil, who is the other presenter of the podcast, of course, he's got a sound background, and perhaps him and you have probably got the two most mellifluous voices I've ever come across.
Yeah, Neil's got quite the voice.
Yes, indeed. But the thing is, this idea that photography is important, of course it is, but then we have these beautiful interviews with people like Mary and many others, I'm sure, that are no longer around. Then you've kind of encapsulated these the sound of them, which is something that really wouldn't have been on the radar for many people. The sound and the interviews are in some ways just as important as the photography making.
But I think that's part of, I guess, when I think about my own legacy, these interviews I think are going to be a distinctive sort of marker of what photography was in our particular time.
Do you still have the passion for it? The same as you had at the beginning?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish it was all I was doing. That and making pictures.
Yeah. Now, one of the questions, going back to photography a little bit, one of the questions we get asked a lot on the podcast is about approaching strangers on the street to photograph them. Now, when I typed in photographing strangers on the streets, I think that I came across it's either a book or a PDF or something that you did on that topic. It might have been a while ago. But the pictures and the content in that were amazing. Now, you've written lots of books. You've got lots of books out there. But in terms of that element of approaching people on the street, what tips would you give to somebody if they were to go out today, COVID's gone away, and they're allowed to wander in the street and take pictures of people?
Well, I have two different approaches. One of them is sort of like the fisherman approach. When it comes to street photography, they've generally two types of photographers. One is the people who go fishing, and then the people who go hunting. The hunter is more of the person who's sort of like constantly moving and bringing the camera up really quickly and trying to capture a moment with people. And then they're like a little shark, moving through the streets, grabbing their photographs. And me, I'm more of a fisherman where I'll find a scene. I'll find a location with the light and the lines and the shape of the color are kind of interesting, and I'll wait for people to move through the scene in order to make the photograph. And with my way of doing it, I really don't have to concern myself to how people are reacting, because they already see me there and they make the assumption that I'm photographing something else. They don't realize that I spotted them like, from 50 feet away, and I'm just waiting for them because they're wearing a nice red jacket that'll complement everything that I've seen. And then there are other times when I want to do like a street portrait, and usually with people like that, I just go up to them and I give them a compliment. There's something about them. Oh, I love that hat you're wearing. Or, I love your shoes, or I love your fingernails. Do you mind if I make a photograph of that? And I'm still considering all the other things in terms of the lighting and the background when I make the portraits. But in terms of just engaging someone, I find that a compliment is really the best way to do it. I learned that accidentally. I gave some woman a compliment about something, and she just glowed after I gave her the compliment. And I realized that my greatest fear was in approaching someone. But if I just went up to someone and gave them a compliment without asking them, can I make your picture? I found that I could get over my fear. So for a month, every day, I gave myself the challenge of giving a compliment to a complete stranger every day for 30 days. And I just saw how people responded to that. And then after that, I started broaching, hey, can I make your photograph? Because if I came up to them and just gave them a compliment and they reacted favorably, then the likelihood that they were going to allow me to make a portrait was increased exponentially. And that's how I just got myself over the fear. Not that I get over it completely. There's some times where my fear still gets the best of me and I don't do it. But I find that that's really probably the easiest way of being able to engage someone knowingly in the making of a photograph.
Yeah, that's really good. The idea of the fishermen and the hunters. And I think when my wife listens to this podcast, she'll say, well, you should start with making a compliment of people you know before the strangers. Once a day for 30 days. She'll be very happy with that. Okay, so here's a question for you. If you could tomorrow go and spend a day photographing, it doesn't have to be on the streets, could be anything, with any photographer, alive or dead, who might it be, do you reckon?
Well, I got an open invitation from Joe Meyerowitz that the next time we're in the same city, we're going to go out shooting.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that whenever I'm in either London or in Italy where he is, our schedules will coincide.
Yeah.
So that's he said we could do that, and I'm looking forward to that. Other than him, the only other person I can think of off the top of my head would be William Albert Allard, Bill Allard.
Yeah.
He's one of my heroes. I met him 2 or 3 years ago. And I got to spend, a couple of days with him, which was nice. But I would love to go shooting out with Bill, because he was one of the photographers who really impressed on me the importance of light and color. He was able to do stuff with Kodachrome that everyone else would have said it wasn't possible. He would shoot in really low light conditions with Kodachrome 64, maybe even 25. And he would make pictures where a lot of other photographers would say, oh, you can't make a picture in here. There's not enough light, and he would just come with amazing results.
One final question. I ask this to everybody. What would you tell an 18-year-old yourself? What would you whisper in the ear of yourself at 18 years old? How would you try and encourage yourself?
It's like, can I curse here?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I curse?
Neil's in charge of the beat button.
Okay. All right, good. I would tell him, photograph what you feel driven, to photograph, and don't give a fuck about what anybody else thinks about it. That would be it. Because I think that myself and a lot of other people get caught up with what other people are going to think about whether it's good or bad or different. And we don't make pictures because it doesn't follow rules or it doesn't follow a particular niche or something like that, and we get defined by what other people's expectations of what are good or what's portrait or what's street photography, about all these shoulds and shouldn'ts. And I'm just like, man, just make a goddamn picture, Don't worry about all these shoulds and shouldn'ts and these rules. Just make the work. And you can worry about, its value either to you or anybody else later. I think people just get so caught up with these hard and fast rules and these judgments that other people have made who don't have the courage to go out and really, give their all to a work, and you get limited by people who don't have the courage to do it at all. And it's like, you can't, I'm learning this now, It's taken me a while to learn this. It's just like, no, man, I just got to make the work. And even if like 80 or 90% of people don't like what I'm doing, it doesn't matter. And if I feel driven to make this work, then that's what I'm driven to do. And hopefully it'll find, an audience. It will find its people. But that's what I would tell an 18-year-old, especially 18 years old, because you're so concerned with what other people think.
Yeah.
And then, as you get older, you realize that means less and less. It's of less importance as you get older and older.
The wonderful Ibarionex Perello. We will, of course, link to his website in the show notes today. And if podcasting is your thing, this week on the Photography Daily podcast, which you're allowed to tune over to, of course, at the end of this one, it being International Women's Day today, March 8th, assuming you're downloading this on the Monday, over on PD, a few things about the women who have shaped history behind the lens. And Deanna Dyckman is my guest, an artist and photographer who has made the most wonderful book called Leaving and Waving. 27 years of something as simple as waving goodbye to her parents over and over during that time. It is absolute proof of the value of understanding the gold that's to be found in life's, simplest of moments and gestures.
My mom had a bright pink blouse, and there was this red house and the green grass and the blue sky, and I just pulled out my camera and took a picture.
Deanna Dyckman on Photography Daily today, with the 200th edition, by the way, on Wednesday, when we have a show called What I've Learned About Photography, which is helped by a host of the guests interviewed over the last 8 months since launch and getting to that number. Right, questions. I think it's my turn first, isn't it, Kev? There was actually a comment and a question. Shall I do the comment quickly? Jeremy Henderson, do you remember last week we were talking about Boris Johnson having messy hair?
Brushes his hair with a balloon.
I know that's... He said, sorry for the politics, chaps, but you did start it. Nothing about buying a comb. Johnson has messy hair, so that people talk about Boris with messy hair and forget about everything else. He said, actually, disastrous policies. You fell for it. Maybe I did too. Or there was another comment about Boris that suggested, it was somebody that said that they had provided him with a brush or something.
Same one, wasn't it?
No, that wasn't the same one. I thought there was another comment that said they'd actually supplied him with a brush in the past.
Yeah, I saw that as well, and there was a picture of him being handed a brush by the director of this company.
There's no excuse, Boris. This one is from Adrian Muscat. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Neil. Here's my question. Has much changed in your approach to photographing weddings since you both first started? And another question, if I may. If somebody was photographing a wedding documentary style for the first time, what advice would you give them? From Adrian Muscat in Canberra, in Australia. So do you want to go with how much has changed since we started?
Yeah, and I think, honestly, I would say very, very little has changed for me in terms of the style. The style that I suppose what has changed is that at the beginning I tried to do the thing I wanted to do, and maybe now I'm a bit closer to doing the thing I want to do. I don't think I'll ever be, I don't think anybody ever should be happy with their work. So yeah, I think style-wise, no, nothing. My objective has always been the same: candid, emotion. Yeah, that's it.
I think I'm similar. Although I think I probably have managed to get more documentary over the last couple of years than I was. And we had a long conversation about group shots last week, obviously. But should we move on from that? But I guess that it's a subtle difference, really. Not that much. No, we both set our stall out as we wanted to photograph, didn't we? Really?
Yeah, exactly. And there will be a lot of people listening to this going, documentary. Everybody's documentary wedding photographer. And they're right. They are right. They don't need to mumble under their breath and raise their eyebrows at us. Everybody who is a wedding photographer does documentary wedding photography. It's just how much of the day and how much of a story do they think they're implementing. That's key. If you spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours doing group shots, and you only spend an hour doing documentary photography, you're still a documentary wedding photographer for that hour. You know, there's no pigeonholing people. It's a ridiculous thing. But mine and your objectives are to spend as much of the day as possible, if possible the whole day, you know, shooting candidly. That may not be what other people want to do, but you know, that's up to them. Everybody is a documentary wedding photographer for a certain part of the day.
I had a conversation the other day that was about how we label ourselves and whether it's really necessary to be called a documentary wedding photographer these days. And funnily enough, that sort of came home when I talked to David Yarrow the other day, who is not a wedding photographer, obviously, at all. He's a fine art photographer. But I made the mistake at one stage, and boy, did he let me have both barrels on this one, of calling him a wildlife photographer. Well, you know, to be fair, a lot of David's really, really important, gorgeous, famous stuff was taken in the wilds. So a bit of a clumsy reference on my part, but he said, you know, I'm a photographer. That's what I am. I'm not this, that, the other. And I wonder, actually, with wedding photographers, whether you know, we're a documentary wedding photographer or traditional, or whether we obsess about it a little bit too much. Yeah,
I mean, perhaps we do, but I don't kind of, you know, if you asked 10 people who'd heard of David Yarrow what kind of photography was he? I very much doubt any of them would say, well, he's just a photographer. Most of them would say he's a wildlife photographer. And, you know, you can't just say everybody's a wedding photographer, because you have to have a definition of style of some kind, because otherwise, how do you separate yourself? How do you stand out? You know, you can't. If you, Don McCullen famously said that he doesn't like to be referred to as a conflict photographer any longer. Because that's not what he does anymore. No. But he was a conflict photographer. And, you know, it's like saying to a food photographer, well, you know, you're just a photographer, so come and photograph my wedding. Well, you know, no. He's not going to, is he? Unless you just want him to photograph your wedding food.
Is it important? Chicken. Is it important for SEO?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, yes and no, I suppose. Some clients will think, right, I want a documentary wedding photographer, and they're going to bang into Google documentary wedding photographer.
Not many, though, I would have thought.
Malmesbury, Wiltshire.
Do you think many would?
No, I don't. No. Not many of them do. No. Absolutely, they don't. They don't even know what they're looking for half the time until they land on somebody's website and they think, oh, actually, there's different styles. I never knew that. Yeah. And then they'll start investigating it. But yeah, absolutely. You know, there's very few people who are dropping into this wedding bubble who will know any of that stuff. They will start off thinking, I need a wedding photographer, and that's how it starts. But that's not the same as saying everybody is exactly the same. No. You know.
And the second part of Adrian's question was, if somebody was photographing a wedding doc style for the first time, what advice would you give them? Well, here's a thought. Maybe photographing it on your own instead of lots and lots of people, 2-3 people. Because I always I refer to my great friend Giles, who says to me, I remember the conversation we had once at one of our port-fueled lunches, where he said to me, leant across the table and he said, you wedding photographers are funny old people. And I said, why is that, Giles? He said, well, you always sort of hunt in packs. What's that about? And he had a point. He said, look, if I wanted to make, you know, little to no noise about myself, I certainly wouldn't have lots of people running around with cameras where somebody's looking over their shoulder thinking, where's the other one? Where's the other one gone?
I totally agree. Yeah.
And that's not just, I can't be bothered to go and find a second photographer at all. It's nothing to do with that at all. It has to do with the fact that I think you can be far more subtle when there's just the one of you being the eye. Yeah,
I agree. And I think, you know, there are many couples that shoot together, and I'm sure they do a very, very good job. And they understand the practicalities of it. But also, I mean, I've been a guest at weddings before where there's been 2, and on a couple of occasions 3 photographers. And honestly, I felt a bit like Meghan Markle, just being paparazzi'd left, right, and centre everywhere you looked. Click, 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 click. And Meghan Markle, is that the right one?
Well, Meghan
is she the one married to Prince William?
No. Okay.
Or is it the German? Am I talking about the German Prime Minister?
Oh, you got that the wrong. No, that's Angela Merkel.
Oh, right.
And she's not married to anybody in our royal family. She's married to Prince Harry, and they live in LA now, of course, with a TV interview coming out, which I assume everyone at SW1A 1AA will be glued to.
How about no?
Oh, maybe not then. Anyway, what about this question? What would your advice be?
My advice for somebody starting out is to always remember, and again, we've spoke about this a million times, you are the photographer. You're there as the technical photographer, but anybody can press the button on a camera. Yeah. You've got to use your eyes, and I never did this at the beginning, so this is a lesson learned from me. Put the camera down, watch, smell, listen, ingrace yourself within the environment, figure out what's happening. You're not paid to have the camera stuck to your eye and clicking the button all the time. Many people will think, oh, there's nothing to take pictures of, but I've got to take pictures of something because that's what they're paying me for. They're not paying you to take pictures of nothing. They're not paying you to take pictures of things you're never going to give them. They're paying you pictures to tell a story of their day. So put the camera down, listen, watch, take your time, look for stories rather than just think, if I take 30,000 pictures today, I'm bound to get 300 good ones. Because you might get 300 good ones, but you're going to piss them all off at the same time.
Here's a question, Kev. When you're standing there, not with a camera glued to your eye, because you are right, sometimes you feel a bit guilty and think, I guess I'd better take a load of pictures now when you think this is not the right moment. What do you do? Where do you look?
I usually look at the football scores.
Because I would never look at the mobile phone because they'd be, look at him looking at his mobile phone.
No, you're quite right. I'd do that if I go out in the room or on my break or something. But no, you're absolutely right. If I'm doing it, if I'm shooting, I will. What I'll often do is grab a drink, soft drink. I've usually got the camera still in my other hand, but just wander around and just looking for the light, looking for, where the most interesting people are, what's happening. Obviously, during the ceremony and things like that, you're pinned. But drink reception, evenings, all of that stuff. If there's one thing that I've learned is there's no such thing as a boring wedding. There is always stuff going on. You just need to look for it. And if you've got the camera pinned to your eyes and you're concerned that you should be taking pictures, you will never see it.
And actually listen for it as well. I find what you hear is sometimes what guides you to go and make a picture.
Yeah, turn your mobile phone on, record the audio for 5 minutes, go into the other room, listen to the audio, and that will tell you so much about the room that you've just been in that you will never even thought of.
Very good advice. Right, there we go. Hopefully that helps you, Adrian, in Canberra. Right, book time. What have we got this week, Kev?
We have got, it's
a tome.
This book, it's a heavy one. This book is called Photography in America. Ooh. But it lies. There's a big fat lie on the cover. Oh. Because it says from 1841 to today. And that's just not true, is it? Because this was published in about 1974. Oh, I see. A startling record of photography and of the nation in pictures chosen from the great collections for the Whitney Museum of American Art. Right. Whitney Museum of American Art. Ever heard of that?
No, I haven't actually, no.
No, neither had I. I wondered if that's what turns into MoMA, but I don't think so. Anyway, it's edited by Robert Doty. It's a big hardback, all black and white, as you would imagine, because of the time. Now, it's one of those books that I've checked to see its availability. You can get it for anywhere between £4.99 and £380.
Because I've looked at one here for £92 on Amazon.
Yeah, so Amazon is around about £92. A-Books varies from £200 downwards. but there are other people selling it. It's on eBay, for example, for about $4.99. And essentially, it's a series of images that are, often of the Great West, in America. And there's a lot of photographers in here. Some of them are very well known, but others aren't. Certainly weren't known to me so much. So I'm looking at a really beautiful picture here on page 91 by Edward J. Steichen, who was alive from 1879 to 1973. And there's another one opposite. That one is titled Isadora Duncan. And then opposite there is the Flatiron Building in the evening. So obviously the famous Flatiron Building.
Yes.
And that's been gifted. 1905 that was photographed. Same photographer, Steichen. Gifted by the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. So I'm going to flick forward a little bit. And there's a wonderful picture here on page 137 by Walker Evans, who was born in 1903. And it's just titled Posed Portraits, New York. And there's a chef and I don't know, he's not a chef. He's not dressed as a chef. So somebody else. This photograph was taken in 1931. And it's held at the Art Institute of Chicago. And it's wonderful because it's 1931, and the guy, he really does look like Charlie Chaplin. He's got the little moustache, his hat is on a little twist, and the other guy is more melancholy and looking into the camera. But it really gives you an indication of, the style of people and what they were doing at the time. He's really obviously kind of tried to come across as that character. And then in the background, there's this lovely, there's a board of the things available in this guy's shop. Ham and egg sandwich. 15 cents. Can't see what that one's. Western sandwich, 20 cents. Just a ham sandwich, 10 cents. So you're paying 5 cents for the egg.
So are these the real something and nothing pictures then?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But then the one right in the middle, the one that spreads right across 2 pages, is the very famous Eugene Smith picture. It's titled Tomoko in Her Bath,
right?
Which is from his Japanese work. Eugene Smith, born 1918, and obviously hadn't died by that point, by the time the book was published. And this picture is 1972, and it's a very famous picture. Beautiful black and white of that Japanese bathing going on. And then, I lied. I said it was all black and white, but actually towards the end, I've come across some color ones. There's a really nice one of it's called The Inner Tubes, but it's stonework, and it's by Syl Labrot. Ever heard of him or her? Syl Labrot? No, me neither. I think it's wonderful. I'm looking through all of these. Dennis Stock, I've heard of Dennis Stock, born 1928. Lucas Samaras, and then we go towards the end. There's some wonderful sports pictures here. Wow, absolutely wonderful ones. Page 218, Robert Rigger photographed this. Willie Mails steers third, New York at Brooklyn, 1955. Now that is, you just don't see this kind of, I don't know, there's like a feeling in this picture of, this guy diving for the base in his Yankees top. Modern sports photography seems, it's brilliant, don't get me wrong, and they're incredibly talented, but I really love looking back at these old black and whites with the grain, and there's a little bit of motion blur, the hat is flying off. 1955, he certainly didn't have a camera that shot 45 frames per second. That's insanely talented. There's another one on the opposite side.
I always think, though, for you, Kev, it's the nostalgia, isn't it? And this is one of those books that's nostalgia heaven for the Mullins. It
is nostalgia, but also it's just talent. It's raw talent. It's just raw talent. An amazing one. Over the Top for Six, same photographer, Robert Rigger. Over the Top for Six, Washington at New York, 1960, and this is one of the presumably Washington Redskins. I don't think they call themselves that any longer, but anyway, what was them diving over the top of a great maul of people in an American football game. There's about 8 of them, like lying on the floor, all looking for the ball, and then this guy is flying through midair like a salmon over the top of them all.
So is this also text with documentary and stuff as well, or
no? So there's introductory text at the beginning,
right, okay.
Which is quite in depth, probably 20 pages or so. But then it's mostly just the pictures, and it explains who the photographer was, when they were born, when they died, the title of the piece, and where it's either gifted from, the museum, or who owns the rights to it now. So I'm looking at one now, Charles Harbert, born 1935. This is called Bride in Cellar.
Right, okay.
And this is a Magnum photo, this is in the Magnum collection, and it's taken in 1966, and it's a bride That's brilliant. She stood obviously in a basement in a cellar in her wedding dress, and she's on a big white mat. So they put a sheet down, and it looks like she's stuck there. She can't move off this white mat because she's going to get her dress dirty.
Yeah.
But she can't go anywhere else.
So it's a documentary of American life for all those years.
Yeah. There's plenty of Diane Arbor stuff in there as well.
Oh,
it's Jack Wellpott. Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. This is one that's been stuck in the corner of my bookshelf. I hadn't pulled it out for a long time. I've just noticed I've got on the inside, it says £3 in pencil. So I probably paid for it. I may have bought it in Hay on Wye or somewhere like that. I have really no idea. But yeah, it's great. If I'll read the little blurb on the inside as I usually do, because I've noticed this blurb isn't available online, so you might not get it. It says, from the greatest American photographic collections, the Whitney Museum of American Art here presents a selection of 259 superb pictures by 86 outstanding photographers. They range in time from 1841, when the camera and its potential were just becoming known, to the present day, when photography has gained full recognition as a medium of artistic expression. Yet, most remarkably, as the sequence of these fine photographs unfold, it is evident that photography in America is more than a brilliant record of photography's aesthetic evolution. It is an extraordinary visual history of a century of American life.
Well, there's a reason to spend your 90-odd quid then, Kev.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. I really like it. It's covered in dust as well, which I like. Good one, that. That's my evening reading.
Old bottle of wine.
Watch something on telly.
Yeah, once she gets in from the co-op.
Yeah, she gets in from the co-op.
Okay. Right, questions. Yours or mine?
I got a good one.
Go on then. Oh,
Keith
but
Martin.
before you do it, and it was Andrew Tate, by the way, that I did find it, that sent an email in about photographic evidence showing that Boris Johnson does have a hairbrush. The CEO of the company that Andrew works for met Boris at the end of 2019 and presented him with a couple of Denman brushes. Judging how long his hair's got, we may send him over one of our famous Tangle Tamers. There we go. It was Andrew Tate, so thank you, Andrew.
I could do one of them. My hair looks like there was nothing in the budget about hairdressers.
Oh,
terrible.
Shame.
Okay, this one is from Keith Martin, and there's two parts to this, and this is a good little question. He says, it looks like we're going to be able to meet with people outside again soon in groups of 6. So what photographers, current or historical, would you like to go on a photo walk with? And an addendum to that, where and when would you like to take them? Time travel is permitted.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, I've already prepared my answer to this. So I would go with Jane Bown, W. Eugene Smith, Martin Parr, and David Bailey.
Yeah.
Because I think they'd have a good old punch up. And we would be at the Whitehall Palace in London on the 28th of January, 1547.
Why 1547?
So we could see Henry VIII die.
Oh my God, it's Henry VIII again.
Yeah.
God.
I'm fascinated by him. That's what I would do. So that's where I'd be. 28th of January 1547. Me, Jane Bown, Eugene Smith, Martin Parr, David Bailey.
Can you imagine Bailey sort of opening up the letter, this invite, saying, "Who the bloody hell is Mullins anyway? Can't f***ing be bothered."
Yeah, can you imagine it? Oh, just like those 4 photographers together, so different in interpretations of everything. It would be fascinating.
Yes.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it would
There'd be Jane Bown with her carrier bag and her cameras. Eugene Smith would be off his head. Martin Parr would be Martin Parr looking for all the colour and emotion. David Bailey would be swearing at Henry VIII on his deathbed, saying, "Look at me, you little git."
Probably worse than that. Yeah, good one. A comment here from Peter Gazer. Oh yes, Starsky and Hutch. Do you remember we talked about Starsky and Hutch driving a car? Got the car wrong.
Yeah.
It was
I thought you did, but I didn't know what the answer was.
Ford Gran Torino. There we go. That solved that one. Georgios Fakinos says, hello from beautiful Greece. As you already know, I'm an amateur photographer, meaning I don't have the anxiety to have to earn money from my work, and I can photograph whatever and whenever I want. However, I'm now in the process of making my first serious project, which may lead to a book being published. Ooh. So I wanted to ask you, as professionals, but also as people who appreciate photography as an art and not just as a business, do you think that social media like Facebook and Instagram are essential for a photographer to market him or herself? I understand that they're important, but I think that the way these platforms operate push the photographer to chase likes. Therefore, they lose their creativity and their style and make work that just gets the likes. What do you guys think? Don't forget to mention my last name because I love the way it sounds, Mr. Fakinos.
Good old George.
Yeah, we love him. Well, you're right there, actually. That I do think that that when you're on Instagram and in that game, and I'll call it a game purposefully, that you can sometimes be lost in the searching for the likes. And I actually think it was a great idea when they turned it off for a while. But of course, all the lovies that needed it for their oxygen couldn't bear the idea of not being able to see their likes every day, and it drove them away from the platform to an extent, I think, didn't it? And that's why it returned briskly.
Well, I don't think it ever left the UK, to be honest with you. The
Not
likes
here,
thing,
no,
I think
not
it's
here,
been
no.
tested in Canada.
No, but when it was tested, Kev, that was I think that was the upshot of it, was that that it turned so many people off. Because it was, I'll use that word again, it was a sense of oxygen for some people.
Well, I think the difficulty is for a lot of people who do make, genuine influencers who, that's their job. They had no way of, selling themselves. But for the rest, I saw this really interesting on this point article, and it was on a blog. It was probably about 6 months ago I read this now. And the entire article was why I deleted my Instagram account. And it went on. I'll summarize it. But basically, I had 190,000 Instagram followers, and I felt that my entire day was spent just looking for how many likes I've got. I was getting depressed if I didn't have as many as the day before, etc., etc. And I just didn't want that. So I deleted my Instagram account. And then I'm thinking, so you deleted your Instagram account, but now you're writing an article on a very well-established photography blog because you need the attention. Yes. You want the attention. Yes. You want people to say, oh, well, your photography's great. You shouldn't have done that, blah, 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 blah. And that same photographer, about 2 years earlier, had written a piece on the same website saying how you should buy likes on Instagram because it will make you look more famous. And so my argument with the Instagram thing and the like stuff is everything is you have two choices. You can either use Instagram and enjoy it and not worry about the likes, or you can use Instagram and not enjoy it and worry about the likes. It's not Instagram's fault. It's not social media's fault. It's not the people who are on Instagram's fault. It's your fault. It's in your own little head. It's your head who's worrying about whether you've got enough likes. You can decide whether that's important to you or not. But I would say that a photography business needs an Instagram account. But just don't let your ego get in the way.
What about a Facebook account as well? I mean, I know they're in the same family, but what's your feelings about
marketplace, I think.
Facebook and Instagram? I mean, we obviously have a very successful for Fujicast. We have, I think, a moderately, reasonably good, strong, successful Facebook group, I think, which is good, and I think it brings on a healthy amount of debate each week.
Yeah, so the Facebook group is good, but that's not really a business page, is it? So you and I both have Facebook business pages for our wedding photography businesses, but I don't get business from that. No. Now, I know people who are in the children's portraiture, baby portraiture marketplace, and they get almost all their business from Facebook. So I think there's swings and roundabouts in terms of Facebook. Yeah. I don't post on Instagram very often. I post on Instagram when I've got something to post. Yeah. I think I did one 2 weeks ago, maybe, it's just not in my mind. And I'd never, the only thing that's important to me is that I answer my direct messages on Instagram, as long as they're not, can I send you a pair of my underpants kind of things. That's critical, but everything else, it's good. I get business from Instagram. I do get wedding inquiries from there, but I don't hashtag the crap out of it. I don't post because I think I have to post, because who's to tell you have to post? Nobody. It should be yourself. Don't follow the crowds. Just use it for what it's for, and don't let that little worm of ego get into your brain, because that's where you'll end up deleting your Instagram account and then going on the internet and begging for attention again.
On the Instagram tipple, you had an idea for Instagram this week, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, well done for reminding me.
We don't just throw this together, George Fakinos had a big hand in me remembering that. Thank you.
Right. So we shall actually probably do this at the top of next week's show, but we will talk about it now because it needs a start point. So what I thought we might do, we do have an Instagram account, FujiCast. Just search FujiCast Instagram and you'll find it. And somebody on the Facebook group mentioned a print swap idea. And I thought what would be really amazing is I'll manage it, but what we want to do is we'll do a hashtag. Let's think of it. FujiCast print swap. There you go. FujiCast print swap. That's the hashtag. No spaces, no underscores. FujiCast hashtag. No, hashtag FujiCast print swap.
It's already falling apart.
And only do it if you're willing to send a print to a total stranger. And at the end of it, whenever we decide the end will be, maybe we'll do it for 6 weeks or something, I will collate it all and I will do a little spreadsheet and I will match up randomly people together and then you can send them a lovely print in the post. Because I was very excited by our letter we had in the post and I thought, yeah, you know what? That's important. So how about that? Is that a good idea?
It's a very good idea. This letter in the posting has really affected you, Kev, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Huh?
Watch out for yours.
Yeah.
I wrote it in red.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I won't be opening that one that day. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you to our guest, Ibarionex. Well, you said you're going to be speaking to him again, didn't you? Are you going to be on his show again?
No, I don't think so. But we'll chat.
All right, okay. Well, it's good to have all these showbiz friends like you have, Kev. And
it says Pete Sousa's best mate.
yeah, me and Pete. If you like this or any of the week's shows, thank you. And if you can, and you feel it's relevant, we'd love for you to leave a review. It really does help. Honestly, it does. If you can share the episode on Twitter or Facebook, you are a star. And let us know where you're sharing because we like to give those platforms a shout out as well. If you're sending questions in, then there's two ways to do that. You can send to click at fujicast.co.uk, click at fujicast.co.uk, or Kev, they can send via Facebook, can't they?
They can go to the Facebook group. There is a post entitled Questions for the Show thread. We've got quite a few in there now, which is good, but the more the merrier. And don't forget, Instagram. Follow us on Instagram, hashtag FujiCast print swap.
Well, we haven't done a lot on Instagram, so maybe we should start uploading some stuff, Kev.
Yeah, we should.
Pictures for a start of your horse would be good. That'd be nice.
Find loads of those on Gemma's Instagram.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. Well, I've seen some, yes. Music is some Blue Wednesday, supporting music from the incredible artlist.io. And we will see you next week. Bye, Kev. Bye.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.